Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Talking Niagara on Wednesday, October 23rd. Hope everybody's good. Glad to be here. And you, Dave, how are you?
Not bad. I got to scram right at 8 today, though.
That's fine. That helps. I got somewhere to go on the way this morning. Okay, so welcome everybody, and a few things here this morning. Just to do brief scan over the headlines before we actually go into any detail. Still issues in Gaza and southern Lebanon with Israel and the like. We've got problems with international students coming here and, basically just a number of other issues which we need to talk about. Okay, and the transit budget looks to be on hold. All right, but we'll get into the details in a little while. Okay. Anything before we hit our first stories, Dave?
No, I didn't watch the city council meeting last night, but I'll check into it later.
Okay. No, I didn't either. I didn't get home until late.
Well, it's recorded, so you could.
I know. And having gotten home late, I just completely forgot about it. So yeah.
Well, I find it's easier to watch it later after it's already done. Then you can skip past a lot of the stuff that you don't need to watch.
Yeah. There's for example, you don't, if you go watch it and you arrive there at 4 o'clock, and it's, it goes on that hiatus until they're ready. It helps to just miss that, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's better to watch the recording afterwards.
Yeah.
Or even start start watching it about an hour after it starts. I found that to be handy because then when they get the in-camera meeting, you could just zip right through that and go to where they're doing their thing again.
Yeah. All right. Well, good morning to Mike Cushman and Peter Baker. Good to have you here. So thanks, guys. Okay, so Israel is still preventing humanitarian missions in North Gaza.
Yes, of course they are, because they want to starve those people out. That's part of their whole issue. When they very first got into Gaza, then they started saying, how come Egypt and how come Jordan aren't taking these people in? How come they aren't? Because now Egypt and Jordan wouldn't take them in. Egypt and Jordan are already full of Palestinian refugees from past wars. The reason why the Gazans don't want to leave, and why the Egyptians and Jordanians or anyone else doesn't want to take them, is because they will never be able to come back. Israel won't let them come back like they did in all.
Well, that's been part of their plan anyway, right from the outset. They didn't want them. They don't want them heading north or east. They want them heading south.
Yes, that's right. And we keep,
of course, they can't head west because that's into the ocean, into the sea.
And what you almost will never hear on the news ever, you'll hear the river to the sea, the Palestinians, of course, wanting Palestine from the river to the sea, or Palestinians free from the river to the sea. But the Likud party, the party that Benjamin Netanyahu is ahead of, and the other parties that make up his coalition, want to eliminate the Palestinians out of the West Bank and Gaza. And they have stipulated in their charter from the river to the sea. And quite often when Zionists talk about the river they often say what side of the river, implying that we'd like to take a big chunk of Jordan as well. And right now they're marching into Lebanon and they're doing all kinds of damage. Of course, they're dropping bombs on places where people live, and of course you're getting children killed.
Yeah, they're killing all these branches for this bank, called Al Hassan. So they've destroyed at least 15 branches for that bank.
Well, the break said the bank knew it was coming.
Yeah.
The bank says it knew it was coming, so had taken certain precautions. But it's insane what they. Well, I don't know how truthful it is, but the Israeli government says there's a tunnel with a room in it full of gold and cash that Hezbollah uses. I'm not so sure that's true. That sounds a lot like
that sounds like that doesn't sound real. And in any case, in the modern era, you're more likely to hit a bank electronically than you would, you'd really, I know losing branches hurts, but losing if you attack them electronically would be way more effective.
Well, we are going to get that cyber war thing happening. That's on the way. We haven't seen a lot of it just yet, but I imagine when the Israelis hit Iran, they're going to hit them with cyber assaults as well. And that's coming too. Nobody's like, I can't understand why this keeps going on and on and on. Like, they are going to. They've already moved 1.2 million people out of southern Lebanon and chased them away. I don't know how long that's going to take, but I can understand what Israel's doing. They're doing a massive amount. They're going to show everybody, you mess with us, you're going to be hurt really bad. Yeah. Trouble is, they don't care how many people they kill. Remember, on October 7th, 1,200 people get killed and 250 people be taken captured. So that's 1,450 people. And they have exacted a revenge in Gaza of over 42,000. They haven't been able to count anymore because there's nobody there to count. They can only get guesses now from the UN, but all the officials are pretty much out of it now. So that's why the number stopped at 42,000, but it's probably much more like 60 or 70,000. We don't know.
Well, we don't know anymore, and that's the problem. Is we've been guessing since that figure, and you're right. It could, it's realistically more likely 50, and you may even be as high as 60.
Yeah, Hamas is still fighting. They just killed a popular colonel in his tank, a few days ago. So there's another guy that didn't have to die if they could ever get a ceasefire.
Yeah.
So if they ever got a ceasefire, Hezbollah said it would stop bombing northern Israel if they could get a ceasefire with Hamas, but they don't want that ceasefire, so they keep fighting in Gaza. So Hezbollah keeps throwing bombs into northern Israel. Northern Israel then uses that excuse to invade southern Lebanon. They've always wanted that piece of land up to the Litani River because water is a very scarce resource in the Middle East. So they want to get up to that Litani River and pass it if they could, and then find some reason to stay there and take that water.
Oh, I don't see them letting it go unless the land is taken back by force.
The only thing that's going to stop it is if the United States finally grows a backbone and says this is enough, particularly in Gaza. They gave them 30. This is unusual. Like Axworthy and Blinken write a letter, said, well, you know what? You haven't let any humanitarian aid into Gaza, particularly northern Gaza, for 3 weeks. We don't like that. So we're going to give you a month to fix that. In other words, we're going to give you a month to starve the rest of the people before you do anything about it. So the Israelis threw a couple of trucks in to make it look good and stop them again, all over again. And Axworthy and Blinken are just kind of holding on to the you-know-whats, looking around, well, what else are we going to do now? Well, the thing is, take the weapons away. And they said, we'll give them 30 days. Yeah. Okay. You know what? You're starving the people. You've been starving the people from northern Gaza most of the time. You're super starving them now because you let no aid trucks in for over 3 weeks. There needs to be 300 to 500 a day, actually. So you let nothing in for 3 weeks. So guess what? We're going to get mad at you after 1 month. You've got 30 days to fix this. In other words, you get 30 days to starve them some more.
Yeah.
No backbone, no guts. What's going on?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And, absolutely. That's, just not prepared to actually do anything against the Israelis. Okay. Anything else on that in those areas?
No, but I don't know. Appeal to whoever, to the fates, to your God, to whatever. Get this thing stopped.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Okay, so there's another American electric car manufacturer on the brink of bankruptcy. This one is called Mullen Automotive, and they basically they're suffering a situation because their company's shares are not worth more than $1 a share, and that means that NASDAQ is delisting them.
Yeah, I thought that's pretty interesting. If you go back in time to when the combustion engine first came out, and all the different car companies there were lots of them, all kinds of them, and I remember.
Well, the numbers
I knew Stratford had a 1922 Cardway. I never heard of Cardways before, and there's a bunch of different car companies out there.
Well, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter which country you go to in the world. Back in the past, go back to the 1900s, 1910s, 1920s, you will find probably pretty well each country had at least 5 or 6 different car manufacturers, and some of which you've never heard of. You've absolutely never heard of, right? I'm not saying you've never heard of because they've been swallowed up by other companies and they've therefore been forgotten. I mean, you have never heard of them, right?
Yeah, well, just remember that, like Pontiac, Plymouth, Cadillac, Dodge, they were all independent companies before they were bought up. Mercury, Ford, you said Mercury Ford dealership. Well, Mercury was an independent car company that Ford bought. So all these different brand names you have for cars at one time were independent car makers. Buick, another one. General Motors, that's why they call it General Motors. They went around and buying up car companies.
A lot of car companies, and they swallowed them up under the one brand of General Motors. And there's plenty of independent manufacturers. Even with those big giants coming along, there was still plenty of independent manufacturers like Studebaker and like Packard that still continued in their era.
Yeah, Packard and DeSoto and all those, and Nash, Rambler, they all hung on there for quite a while. Now, that kind of situation happened when the electric car came out. There was a lot of small electric car companies made up, and Mullen is one of them.
Yeah.
The reason why Tesla is where it is now is because it was a small electric car manufacturer that somehow got the attention of Elon Musk. Once that happened, there was no holding it back because that guy is something else. Industrial. As far as politically, he's a nutcase, but as far as technology and all that, he is amazing.
Yeah. Well, one of the questions though about this whole era is that I think the electric car, the electric car is going through somewhat of the same, as you said, as the normal automobile did 100+ years ago. But it's also another question. I have to wonder whether the question here is whether our society is quite ready for the electric car yet. Right? I know that there are people who buy them. There are fans of them. There are users of hybrid vehicles. But you've also got many many pre-existing brands, many large brands getting into the electric car market, which does make it very difficult for a new electric car to be coming along, something different to be coming along. In fact, actually, if you think about it, we have car standards, which means that back at 100 years ago, there weren't standards, so everybody was bringing out their new car from the 1880s to the 1920s. There was always room for a new, radically different model to come along. Whereas today we're looking at a vehicle as being almost that we need a four-seater model, that you've got to rely upon, rather than something different, something strange, something that boggles the mind. Maybe there is a one-seater, room out there for a one-seater electric Isetta type thing.
Well, what I see right now is like a lot of these electric. We're very slow. We're way behind.
Yeah.
Asia and parts of Europe are way ahead of us in shifting towards electric cars. My God, when I was in India, they had electric auto rickshaws. The rickshaws that normally are little gasoline engines, like a small motorcycle engine or something. A lot of them were plug-ins now, and when you ask them, they get enough power to do an 8-hour shift before they have to go and plug in again. So they're ahead of us. When I was in Portugal, they had electric buses. I remember hearing complaints about
electric buses have been around. Electric buses,
battery electric buses, not run off a line. Battery electric buses,
I know.
An electric car.
Yeah, but battery electric buses have been around in Europe for as much as 30 years.
Well, you don't see them much here. And when I was in Portugal, there were brand new ones, new electric buses, a lot of electric cars. The more electric cars there than we're here. So we have stifled our advance into electric cars. We remember that there was Who Killed the Electric Car. There was that documentary about like GM was starting to get way ahead in electric cars, and then they just crushed them all because oil companies and others wanted to hold back the technology. Now we are the ones that are trying to catch up to everyone else, and that stopped us from buying a whole lot of electric cars. Like, we find our electric car companies are being delayed in operations of bringing out electric cars. Well, they all of a sudden said, okay, now it's time for electric cars, instead of blending it in like every other thing. That's why Tesla is successful and none of the other companies are. You GM, Ford, and Chrysler, they got electric cars, but they're not really that successful in it because, like they said, like Tesla built electric vehicles and blended them into the market and took care of charging stations and all that. GM says, okay, here's a car. Here's an electric car now, right? How are you going to get people to understand?
Again, the issue about what Tesla did is Tesla also, essentially, most of the car manufacturers out there are now actually producing. They have to produce their chargers, etc., to the same Tesla standard, because they're
where else are they going to get charged?
Yeah, nowhere else they're going to get charged, because in fact, actually, even independent charging stations are building them to the Tesla standards.
You have to remember the kind of resistance that's happening in industry too. Those people who make water pumps, for instance, the people who make the hoses for your car, the people who make the belts for your car, the people who make the coolant for your car, they're all resist this.
Yeah, of course.
And the unions themselves weren't too happy about it, because when you get an electric car, you start assembling an electric car, there's a lot less parts to it.
Yeah.
If there's a lot less parts to it, then there's a lot less money.
Because in fact, actually, the whole point about car manufacturing is you've got a speedo that's made in one city, a electric pump that's made in another city, the gas pipe work made in a separate city, etc., etc. So there's all of these parts being made all across the world. An engine, when they're all put together, they're put together in an assembly plant that pulls all these jobs that everybody else has already done together into one heap, which is what produces your car. So yes,
electric cars have to be assembled too in the same way, with a lot less parts.
Yeah,
there's where the resistance
mechanical parts. Yeah,
you're going to get resistance from the steel company because you're going to need less steel. You're going to get resistance from the gasoline and oil company because just imagine take a significant amount of gas cars off the road, and you reduce the amount of demand for oil and gas.
We don't have
what about the people who make the exhaust? What about the people who make the exhaust? What about the people who make the exhaust pipe?
Yeah,
you see what I mean?
You don't have a fuel tank. You don't have all of those kind of bits that feed fuel through an engine, and you don't, your engine's electric.
Yeah, so there is a lot less parts. My whole point here is that the combustion engine is an amazing thing, but it's a complicated piece of machinery.
It's got 250,000 different parts that come from 250,000 different manufacturers.
Sure, it's got valves, it's got lifters, it's got a crankshaft, it's got all these kind of things. What does an electric car have? It's got a motor. Basically, it's got a motor and wheels and a battery. To make
plus the internal creature comforts that we love.
Well, yeah, but we get them.
You couldn't sell an electric car without the creature comforts.
Well, that comes with the battery, and the power supply for a combustion engine is a gas combustion engine, and but the power supply for a car and its creature comforts come from its battery. So what do you got? You got a battery, you got a motor, right? You got a steering wheel.
Well, actually, there is a couple of things in here that I'm always intrigued about, and we're completely off the topic anyway, but I'm completely intrigued about is it's fairly clear how a electric car would make coolant, right? Because there's your gas cars drive coolant through electricity means anyway.
Coolant? Coolant? You mean coolant is there to keep the engine cool?
AC in your car, not AC.
Well, the AC. Okay, you're talking about AC.
Air conditioning in your car, but I don't know how they heat your car. I don't know how an electric car heats it.
It's the same thing. It's an electric element. It's electric element, and the same thing for the air conditioner part. It's just basic. You just install an electric air conditioner in it, and as far as the as far as the heat, you just put a heating element in it. Like in a combustion engine, you take the heat for your car off the engine itself. It's rerouted through the core, and then comes back out through the. As far as the air conditioning part of the car, that comes out of that comes out of a little air conditioner you have in the car that's driven by.
Yeah, but those are driven electrically.
Yeah. There's no mystery to what electric car can provide.
Yeah. Anyway,
in any case, well, that's just about it, basically.
And Mullen's problem is the fact they can't keep their shares above the $1 per share level, and which means that they are taken off of the normal listing for NASDAQ shares. Well,
the point here is they need a genius like Elon Musk. Tesla was very much a marginal company that made a few electric cars for wealthy people. Tesla walks in and he's the brand new Henry Ford. Henry Ford did not invent the combustion engine. He did not invent the assembly line. What Henry Ford did is he made everything much better. He made a better assembly line. He made a better car. He made a better combustion engine. He made everything better. And that's what a guy like Tesla does. He's driven to make things better and innovate. a car like Mullins, who might have the best electric car on the market, but nobody knows it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. You don't know, and it also might be the best buck for, buck for. I was going to say, buck for whatever it may be the fastest for the dollar price that you get. We don't know, but we don't know anything about the car.
That's right.
And that's part of the problem that we face. Okay, moving on. Oh, we got a few comments around this. Yeah. Okay, we had electric trolleys in the 1800s, yes, because they were run off the electricity given power of the power grid. From the web, General Motors EV1 was a battery electric car produced by the American manufacturer in 1996 until its demise in 1999, yes. Gas engines equals independence. Yeah, because of the fact you could. Well, actually, independence to a certain degree. I remember there's a road.
You have to have gas.
You have to have gas, yes. But there's a lot more of that. There's still a road that I remember in North America where it says on the roadside, pulling now, the next gas station is 482 miles.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Gas equals independence if you can get the gas.
Yeah.
Electric battery is independence if you can get if you can get a charge.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. You pull up to a charger or you pull up to a gas pump. It's exactly the same thing.
But actually, there's another question here that Peter Biker asked: why aren't rolling electric vehicles charging themselves? I would basically say that I'd add on to that pretty well all of the outer surface of an electric car should actually be a power receptacle, should be like a great big solar solar collector.
They are. Tesla's outside of their car is a solar panel. Yeah. Basically, and they charge there. The problem with charging as you're rolling along is its resistance.
Yeah.
That's the problem. So if you push your pedal down and your electric car goes forward and you've got a generator on your wheels, that's counterproductive because you're pushing against resistance, which means as you charge, you're draining more of your battery because you're pushing against that resistance. There is attempts to have your braking power charge back into your battery as you press down on your brakes. It may generate enough some power to go back into your battery. So remember, electric cars are in their infancy right now, and a lot of these factors are coming into play. How best to charge solar panels, charging batteries, they're all getting better all the time. And the ability to charge is getting better all the time. If you can imagine the kind of fuel you needed to push a car around in 1950 and the kind of fuel you need to push a car around in 2000, there's a vast amount of difference. And the same thing's going to happen with electric cars. They're going to advance along the way. And there's going to be charging stations. When cars first came in, you couldn't take them up north. You had to take your own fuel if you wanted to go up, use a car up north, because there was no gas stations. So you had to box up your own fuel and take it.
Yeah.
If you had a car, a lot of people didn't get cars because there was no gas available.
Again, when you got up north, that's fine. You can hitch up to the horse and go, yeehaw, yeehaw.
Well, yeah, or if you get farther up north, you can sort of lasso a caribou and make him. But just aside, these things are happening. They're going to happen. The rest of the world has adopted the electric vehicle very fast. The Chinese make a very, very good electric vehicle that if they were to sell it in Canada would be $11,000 or $12,000, and it is not as good as Tesla, but it's getting close. So you get a pretty damn good car for $12,000.
That actually sounds like, if you think about it, put your current gas car aside, leave it for your joyful the weekend. Pick up that $11,000 Chinese one and use it as your commuter vehicle.
Yeah, you could. Now No, that's the reason why we put 100% tariffs on them, because they can make them better and faster than we can. And electric cars are being used in Thailand, in Cambodia. They're being used, I think, in Brazil. So they are already areas that have difficulty getting oil and gas, or have to be dependent on the Gulf for oil and gas, like China, like Southeast Asia. They're turning more to electric cars because it's easier to make power, generate power, than it is to drag in and refine fuel. So you're going to find that in Africa and other places too, where it's, in order to, you have to produce the oil, have a refinery, and then a distribution. When you already got an electric network already set up, and if all you have to do is boost that to be able to take care of electric vehicles. So I think we're going to see the rest of the world has already adapted it faster than us. Like we squashed ours back in 1999, as was pointed out there. The V1 oil and gas companies and things like that. Oil and gas companies bought the battery companies, and the guy I remember watching the car. I think it was the Who Killed the Electric Car, or at least one of the guys that was in it. He had a battery company, and he had the most advanced batteries at the time. And when then they got this investor, somebody that bought the place, and he thought, oh boy, now I got a lot of money to keep going. No, they just bought him out and said, get lost, and closed the place. So we stifled our own economy, put ourselves second place because of the interest of big oil and gas. And I would say even probably the unions might have had something to do with that too, because they could see that electric car coming in, when it did, would reduce the amount of manufacturing jobs. So I wouldn't want to put that on the union right now, but I could see that there was a lot of resistance to that kind of thing. They saw jobs going out the window. Anyway, that's how I see it, and it's just going to be a matter of time before electric cars come in.
Essentially, I see it as one of, we don't yet have the infrastructure properly, fully throughout everywhere that we need, and that in itself leads to challenges to newer, less well-known companies. They may have the best car, the best electric vehicle there is, but if we don't know about it, we can't buy them.
Yeah, like I say, Mullen may have the best best car, or at least certain things that are best or better than Tesla or anything else. But who's going to know about it? Because they don't have marketing as well. Yeah. They don't have the manufacturing capability. Who's going to buy them when they know that if you buy a Tesla, you get a pretty reliable car. It's going to go for X amount of miles. You're going to be able to, you know what it's going to do. But who's going to buy a Mullen? You're going to take a chance on a Mullen because you never heard of it. That's the unfortunate thing. Mullen has to find their own Elon Musk, in order to get their product out there. Like I don't know how it's rated as a car.
But here's the challenge about anything like that is no company should really be reliant upon having to get an external Elon Musk in order to make their company work.
That's what brand new companies, that's what drives them. Look like a guy like Jobs, right? Jobs.
It's the idea that drove Apple. That's for sure.
Sure. And what did Apple do? They kicked Jobs out. And what did they have to do? 5 years later, they had to beg him to come back.
Yeah.
Because they messed up. They had no vision. He had vision. In other words, like, you need a person with vision, and they can see a little bit into the future. And that's what the guy
Peter is of the,
at least in manufacturing, not so much politics.
Peter Biker is of the opinion that the storing transfer of electricity will always have its limits, so the solution will be choice and variety.
Yeah. Remember, electric cars are still in their infancy. Look what's happened we pretty much maximized the ability of a combustion engine. You're not going to get that much more efficiency out of it. We've had it for over 100 years. Well, we've had it for 140 years, basically, the combustion engine, 150 almost. So 140, 150 years we've been living with the combustion engine, and we pretty well maxed out its efficiencies.
Yeah.
Plus the fact that we have the problem of the amount of carbon it dumps into the air and other pollutants as well. So now remember, the pollutants back in 1900, the major pollutant was horse manure, and nobody knew where they were going to put all this horse manure. Everybody said if we keep expanding our city and developing our economy, we're not going to have any place to put all the horse manure. Well, that quickly changed with the combustion engine. Now we're talking about all the carbon in the air, and if we switch over to electric vehicles, a lot of that would be mitigated as well.
Yeah. All right. Now we got a situation whereby thousands of international students at Ontario colleges are likely to miss out the current semester because of visa uncertainty, etc.
Well, what we have is we have a lot of students. One of the things they're doing is applying for refugee status, and so they've come over, and they had expectations of staying after they finished their schooling, but now
no, this is about students, new students coming in though.
Brand new ones.
Yes. So some of the schools are having trouble filling, because basically thousands of international students at Ontario colleges are going to miss this semester because of visa delays.
Well, the Canadian government messed up on its visas in a couple of different ways.
Yeah.
And it's tried to speed things up. And I've watched a couple of news videos on this. Well, first of all, Canada had a backlog of people trying to come into Canada, so they reduced the prerequisites that they had to have to get into Canada. But as soon as they did that, people swarmed into Canada, thousands at a time. And as soon as they got here, they were no longer tourists, but they were claiming refugee status. So that bogged everything down. Then the students themselves, who felt that they were going to be turned back, they claimed refugee status. And now the Canadian government has had to return for the second time to its visa system to fix that, because and that's the slowdown in the visas, because they messed up, and they went twice. They messed up. Once reduced the qualifications needed to come to Canada, so they had to fix that, and then they tried to get technical a new computer system, basically a new technique to do this, and they messed that up. So they are in a situation where they've messed up twice with the visas, and it's caused a lot of trouble for Canadian immigration, and that is probably the source of the slowdown in visas now, because they were so flawed that they're going to have to be looked at more carefully, each applicant.
Yeah. One of the challenges here is that Glenn Vollebrecht, president of the St. Lawrence College in Kingston, Ontario, has said that his college was expecting 1,600 international students to start this fall. And currently, only 775 have actually enrolled in courses. So those are the ones that have actually walked through the door, signed the relevant paperwork to say, "Hi, I'm here and ready to start."
Well, this is unfortunately, the student thing has become a real cash cow for Ontario and Canada. Bring in a lot of students, charge them 4 times as much as we do our in-house, our residential students, the people who were born here, and then
and the college
you need that influx of foreign students, which is bad, because that means you don't have enough houses, you don't have enough health care, you don't have, and the expectation of every student is to stay here.
Yeah.
And now that can't happen. So I think it says here last month, Immigration Minister Mark Miller announced that he would lower the cap by another 10%. These are the students coming into Canada, meaning some 300,000 fewer permits would be issued over the next few years. The Canada plans a limit of 437,000 study permits in 2025 and 2026. I mean, when you were having 1 million before, that was something else. So that's part of the problem is how they're, and it says here, let me see if I get back here. The president of St. Lawrence College said he was expecting 1,600 new international students, 775 enrolled in courses. So, yeah, and this is a direct result of some of the federal policy decisions that we've seen take place. Now, we found, of course, we've had way too many students come into the country that we cannot facilitate. We have too many immigrants, too many refugees. We can't facilitate them. We don't have the health care for them. We don't have the housing. We don't have, et cetera. And we can't keep them after. So, of course, now everything, the way the government was doing things and it wasn't working, they have to change it. And as I said before, as far as visas are concerned, they've had to change them twice. They had the visas where they had too many people coming in and immediately claiming refugee status, which gives them the right to stay a few years and work. And then they had, and so that was a big rush of people to, and then afterwards you've got students hanging around that want to stay in refugee status. So the visa system has to be fixed, and I think that is what's slowing things down. Is that the government has botched the visa system a couple of times, and that they're going to be a little more careful this time.
Mohawk is basically saying that enrollment has dropped 38% at their colleges.
Yeah, like I said, it's a cash cow for these guys. I mean, and what are they taking? I was talking to a young, like I made a joke about just about every South Asian I met took hospitality. Well, hospitality, that's like, it's like taking psychology or something. There's a very few amount of jobs. There are some jobs for people who take hospitality, but that's a course that's taught here for people who need to work in the hotel industry and the tourist industry. But how many people you can graduate 10,000 or 1,000 hospitality degrees, and where are they going to work?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. That's, I think we're just taking advantage. But the thing that really, really got me is there was a guy that came into Canada, and I was talking to him, a South Asian guy, and he was taking welding. So he come all the way over here to take welding in Niagara College or one of the local colleges. Welding. And that he would get a job if he gets all his tickets and does a complete welding course like that. He's got a better chance of getting a job than somebody that comes in for hospitality. But I thought to myself, these people are getting pretty smart. They're coming in and looking for jobs that have or courses that will have practical jobs. Yeah. Like welding, you always need welders,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. All right.
Don't always need somebody with a hospitality degree.
Not really got much in the way of comments except for Peter Biker, who's basically saying academic are essentially running a Ponzi scheme with these foreign students. And in a way,
I'm afraid there's an element of that, yeah.
In a way, they are. The challenge, I think, with the international students, you see, international students used to only be probably less than a tenth of the population of any college would be less than a tenth would be international students, and they'd be paid for by basically, they couldn't work here, they couldn't do, there's a lot of things that international students could not do, but there was always an expectation that at the end of the day they'd probably be able to stay, but there'd be a lot fewer of them. There'd only be less than 10% of the student population would be international students. So it was not a problem having, that 10% stay if they could get through those 3-4 years of, where they couldn't work, where they had to rely upon their family monies, for all of their student time.
Well, the Canadian government's problem here too, because when they advertise for Canadian colleges, they say study, work, live, stay. They those are the things across the top of the application form. Stay is the last one. Now they don't want them to stay. They got to go. So the expectation of all these students to come in and stay. And of course, as we talked about yesterday, it's the Indian students feel the friction between the Canadian and Indian government has something to do with the amount of Indians going to be deported now or asked to leave. That isn't the case at all. There's no evidence of that at all. But of course, they're going to think that because all of a sudden the government's policies changed and they're all being sent home. Well, not all of them, but many of them. And it's going to take a long time for all that to happen because a lot of them are just going to disappear into the ether.
Yeah.
Just going to disappear into the ether.
Yeah. Okay. So anything else? Sorry.
Nothing else except that if Trump gets in less than a couple of weeks from now, less than a couple of weeks now, is if Trump gets in, we're going to get massive amounts of people pouring over our border from down south. He says he's going to deport 11 million right off the bat. Guess where they're going to come? Up here.
Yeah, well, you see it again. Whilst the election is in 13 days' time, we possibly won't know the real result for another 13 weeks after that.
Yeah. Well, the way they've tried to change the election law, I mean, they try to change it in Georgia, which is a right-wing state most of the time, or at least the governing aspect and the judges aspect in the United States. They try to change the rules there, but the Supreme Court of Georgia wouldn't go along with it. But that effort is happening everywhere. And we have a real problem because judges in the United States are either Democrats or Republicans, the ones that are elected. So we're going to have a real problem here when we're trying to judge the efficacy of an election. And if it goes towards the court, and the court, and we've seen what kind of pressure there was on Republicans. If they don't say what Trump says, they're out. If Trump says he won the election, and they say, well, maybe you didn't, you're gone. So you have to. I don't know what's going to happen.
All right. Well, okay. So moving back local, the transit budget hike is likely to be put on hold. All right. So the Niagara taxpayers will have to wait a few more weeks to find out how much they will pay for Niagara's transit budget next year, because the Niagara because their transit commission recommendations are being re-looked at. So they're looking at this on the November 7th meeting of the budget committee at the region.
Here's the irony. The buses, our bus system, our transport system is very costly, and we pay more for it than we get out of it. But the one demographic in the city that uses the buses a lot are foreign students. If you ever look at any of the buses, you see they're all full of people from all over the world. There's very few white faces on the bus. They're East Asian, they're East Asian, they're South Asian, and they're African, basically faces on those buses. So I think Burgess spoke about that as a CEO. He says, when they were talking about reducing the amount of students, I think, I'm not so sure if it was him that says it, but they're the ones that were using the buses. And if you go to any of the bus terminals, that is the truth. You find that foreign students or brand new Canadians are the ones that are using the buses. So they're the ones that are actually paying for it as much as we can. Well, we haven't got used to using buses yet. I'm sure there's probably
some of this is about actually how individual cities usage statistics. So if the numbers of bus hours in an individual city have gone up, then likely the transit cost will have gone up for that city. All right, and it's all based upon transit hours.
Yeah, we're in a crossroads here where we have not acclimatized ourselves to using the bus. Like people in Toronto or the big cities, that they just their expectations is to use the bus and the transit system because it's easier. Frankly, it's quite easier. But with us, it's easier to use a car. In order to grow the transit system, you have to have riders. In order to have riders, you have to have a better transit system. It's a catch-22. So the transit system is long and it takes a long time and it's not that efficient. In order to get it more efficient, you need more money. That means you need more ridership. You can't get more ridership because it's slow and ponderous and not that efficient. So it's catch-22. If the systems were as efficient as they are in Europe or in the bigger cities, then we would have more ridership. But that's is it worth that kind of investment?
Yeah.
The younger people will probably use the buses more often, and the new Canadians will. But that'll take a generation or so.
Yeah. Okay. The thing is that and a lot of the charging that they're currently doing is based upon the numbers of service hours that are actually held in any city. So for places like Pelham, apparently the service hours went down in Pelham and Niagara-on-the-Lake, whereas Fort Erie, the service hours have gone up. So Fort Erie is going under this formula. Fort Erie is going to pay more for buses than it did.
Yeah, and it says it tells you why, because they've actually added some more services down there, haven't they?
Oh yeah, because in fact probably Fort Erie has not very few.
Yeah, so like Fort Erie. So this is the Niagara Regional Intercity Transit is a really good idea, but it does cost a lot of money. And so it says here St. Catharines is 41% of the cost, Niagara Falls 28.2%, Welland 11%, and Thorold 49% remain nearly the same. So that, and then it goes on about Port Colborne and Niagara and all that. It's just that taxpayers are going to have to fund it some more. Rates are going to, for now, rates have been held firm, but that'll change. It's just a matter of how do you take a transit system and make it the main source of your transportation. Like I have a friend. I think that she is getting old and she may not be able to drive much longer. She will be the one that now starts taking the buses.
Yeah.
And things like that, because she has no other resources. Once she is unable to drive anymore, she'll have to take the buses. How else is she going to get around? So that if the so when you start having that, I think you're anyway. Peter Barker says, "Have a great day." Yeah, you too.
Yeah. So clearly
Anyway, I gotta go too. So
yeah.
I'll say,
And just say, Karen Fraser, the money from the province is based upon ridership numbers.
yeah, you see that's the same catch-22, right? In order to get more riders, you need a better system. But you can't get a better system unless you make the investment, unless you get more riders to pay for it. So what's going to happen first, the chicken or the egg?
Yeah, exactly. All right. And we'll leave it at that point.
All right. Without further ado, I bid you adieu. Pray for those people in the Middle East.